Thank you so much for coming. I am Eric Ludwig. I'm one of the co-founders of Rise Technology Advisors, and we are the host today along with the Northridge group. Jeremy, please raise your hand. Jerry's the CRO, former colleague for many years at AT&T. Also our co-founder at Rise, Ed Wu, is here. I'd love you to raise your hand there. Thanks for coming. We have a great panel for you and a great set of partners that have helped us put this event together. We have a really great, diverse group of people here. And we have people in operations, people in sales, we have people in marketing, we have big firms, we have small firms, we have manufacturing folks, we have service-related folks. It's a really, really diverse group of people. And our hope is that we can all collaborate together. We can all talk about things that are happening or things that are not happening. And we've done our best to try and weave in some of the questions that many of you responded to when I reached out to you individually and thanked you for registering and asked if there was anything specific that you'd like to discuss. These topics permeate all of us. You'll hear me talk a little bit about my elbow surgery I had last week and how absolutely awful and abysmal our patient experience is across most of our health systems here in Chicago and undoubtedly around the country. Forgive me for moving around a little bit. I got hit by a car on my bicycle, and got thrown over the front handlebars, and so I had my elbow repaired. Thankfully, I didn't break my neck or my back. And if you have kids or you're a biker, wear a helmet. Wear a helmet, wear a helmet, wear a helmet. I don't know if I'd be here today if I hadn't. So I'm going to ask the panelists to each introduce themselves. They also bring a really nice diversity, I think, to our discussion. And we're going to open it up at times for some questions. The group here, we're all seasoned enough and have been around enough where we should be able to take questions as they come. I am going to ask Marcus for you to switch with, so Adam, if you could move over one. Brandon, if you could move one. Marcus, you're on the end. So the only one that had the right musical chairs was Jill. So congratulations. Congratulations. So Adam, if you don't mind introducing yourself, the role you have in the company, and then pass the mic, we'll start there.
Sure. Hi, everybody. For those I haven't met, my name is Adam Rasner. I'm the Vice President of Technology Operations for AutoNation. If I'm moving a little slow, my morning started at 4 a.m. Eastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so I'm happy to be here, but I'm a little bit slow this afternoon. Anyway, AutoNation, if you guys don't know, is the country's largest automotive retailer. We do have a pretty substantial market in Chicago, but our big markets are Florida, Texas, and California. We are everything automotive, about 350 rooftops. We are new car dealerships of every brand except some of the exotics. We have all pre-owned, which is AutoNation USA. We operate 80 collision centers, 4 auction houses, parts distribution. We just developed our own financing arm that wrote $1 billion in loans last year. And recently, AutoNation Mobile Services, so we can roll a car to your service van to your house to do anything that doesn't require a lift. 25,000 employees, $27 billion in revenue. We're a Fortune 150 company. About to come up on my 9th year with the company. My responsibility is all the back-end technology, so data center, network, DevOps, database management, all the operations, the incident management, change management, help desk, field support, and user computing. I stay busy, yeah. So happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the panel, and looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Brandon Knight. By title, I am the head of the ZCX ecosystem at Zoom, which basically means, while we're building out our CX practice, I have a couple of B's. I decide whether I want to build something, whether I want to buddy with somebody, or whether I want to buy something to build what we have. If you haven't heard of Zoom, it's this company that does, we have like this video. No? Okay, all right. Well, in addition to the obvious, we actually do have a, we say we're kind of like an island within the masses, because everyone knows what Zoom does, no one knows what we do. But we actually do have a contact center product, workforce management product, AI, phone product, and that's the division that I work in, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Great. Hi, I'm Jill Billhorn, and I'm thrilled to be here. I spent the last 15 years at CDW, as prior to that, in a multitude of telecommunications opportunities, AT&T, MCI, etc. And all that being said, what really makes me pleased about being here is seeing all the new folks that I've met, and also people that I've worked with for a very long time. And it's a testament to understanding. If you say kids wear your helmet, I say never burn your bridges. That's what I would tell my kids, because the relationships you make along the way in business, no matter what we're tackling, whether it's cloud or COVID or AI or anything else, it comes down to the relationships that you build along the way, and people who are willing to help you and who are willing to talk about their issues and challenges and solve problems together. So thank you very much for being here. I hope you find the conversation exciting. I represent the sales part, so be interested in hearing your thoughts there as well. So thank you all for coming.
Now that I'm in the right seat, my name is Marcus Garcia. I'm with NICE. Don't know who NICE is. We're a software company that makes customer experience software, all driven by AI, all living on a single platform. I happen to run our healthcare vertical practice, so we've taken all of that sort of CX, customer experience stuff, and we have aimed it at trying to solve the problems, some of which Eric alluded to, in trying to resolve some of the patient experience friction that exists out there, and just trying to get some simple things done. It's an interesting thing to be a patient.
Marcus, can you speak up just a bit? I'm not sure. Can you hear Marcus in the back?
Hello?
Here.
Better?
I got it.
That wasn't close enough. I'm getting the right angle.
There you go.
But I was done anyway, so nice to meet y'all.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Both Zoom and NICE were kind enough to sponsor our event this afternoon. In addition, we have another sponsor in Sonus. Please raise your hand, Tiffany. Tiffany is joining us from Dallas, and John. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. They've got some really cool tech. I invite you to go and spend a few minutes with Sonus. Their accent mitigation. So for those of you that are old enough to remember when Dell outsourced all of their customer service to India and then took such a hit because people couldn't understand their agents and they ended up insourcing it all back to the United States. You no longer have to do that because there's technology now that will mitigate accents from all around the world in real time and allow you to offshore agents to places in Latin America, in the Far East, and to have them sound like they have a Chicago dialect. The technology is incredibly relevant. It's super lightweight, and it just works. In addition, they're developing real-time language translation. So even agents who maybe English is not their primary language, you now have the ability for tasks that are capable of offshoring to bring some potential cost savings to the contact center by integrating their tech, and their tech stack's super easy to proof of concept. So thank you both for coming and for sponsoring this afternoon. I think probably the thing that we hear most when we talk about customer experience, and Marcus and Brandon both mentioned it, and it came up in every single one of your responses when I reached out, was talk to me about AI. AI is kind of the most recent term similar to cloud, and when I was at CDW, I was the cloud team lead and helped bring a good number of cloud partners to the ecosystem. And we used a term called cloud washing, which was effectively when companies claimed they were cloud companies, but they really weren't. I think that's happening, and I think we would all agree that we're starting to see more and more of that. But there's a delineation between what is automation, what is AI, and what is generative AI. And they're all kind of being lumped into one. So I felt like to start the AI conversation that Adam has a real interesting perspective from a client side of some of the fatigue. I think you used the term AI fatigue. Can you share with us kind of what you're seeing, not just in the CX space, but overall around AI and why you're feeling fatigue and what advice you might have for the broader audience?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of A lot of AI fatigue, it's in every conversation you have with anybody you talk to in tech, and especially every vendor, they feel like they have to work AI into every conversation. My struggle being an operations side and thinking about security as well is preventing AI sprawl, right? There are sanctioned projects happening with in IT that some of them are what I call customer-facing AI initiatives, and then there's behind-the-curtain things that we're doing for our associates and our employees, automation AI, things like that. But the challenge is there's rogue things happening that have a lot of concern about where people are going out and installing things within teams. Tell you a quick story. CIO approached me a year ago and he said, hey, 5 people in finance want the paid version of Copilot. And I said, okay, no problem, but we should probably run that security readiness assessment before we do this. And he said, it's 5 people, they want it now. Okay, well, it's a year later, now there's 30 people that have it. He said, give me a license. And I gave him a license, and then he ran some queries about compensation data. And things came back that are not public. And he said to me, we gotta roll this back. We gotta slow it. And I said, remember that conversation we had a year ago? So the guardrails have to be up. Things have to be sanctioned. And the other part of AI that I think is a challenge is, well, everybody wants you to approach you with AI and a product and stuff like that. It's hard to take that from conceptual to how it's really going to add value, right? So I think it's a struggle. You got to have real strong use cases. It's got to be a sanctioned thing that has the security guardrails around it, and it's really got to be thought through and add value. And I think we're going to talk about how it adds value and how you measure that. But that's what I would tell you.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And I think as practitioners within the CX space, particularly for you, Brandon, and for you, Marcus, you have clients that are asking you, how do I evaluate these types of tools and where do I get the most impact initially? Brandon, if you don't mind sharing, Zoom predominantly has been homegrown in terms of most of your AI and most of your development. How would you share to the group, number one, what are some kind of low-hanging fruit components, A, but then more broadly, B, how do you bring ROI to the business? And if you're talking to a potential client, where are you showing them technologies that have the greatest impact?
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to start with the in reverse, because I think the ROI is a huge hurdle, conversation, whatever you want to talk about, and it has to be addressed early on. And the first thing I want to tell you, and this may sound really weird, is that how many of you, and this might be awkward for some of you because the person might be in this room, but how many of you work with someone or for someone who has told you go get AI in the last, last year or whatever? Just go get it right. I know some of you can't raise your hand, that's okay. All right, here's the thing. You can't do that. AI is not a product, and I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. It's not something you can go buy off a shelf. You have to think of AI not as the steak and potatoes. It's not the meal you're eating. It's just seasoning. Okay, you have to have a meal already. And as an operator, I'm going to tell you, make sure your meal tastes good before you decide whether you're going to put some AI on it in the first place. So do some evaluating. And I say that because a lot of people think AI is going to flip a switch. It's going to fix something. It's going to automatically make you more efficient, or automatically save you money, or automatically increase your revenue. It's not. It's not. Your business operations need to do those things first. And then AI can be kind of, I'm old, so I'm going to say like the bad man, some of you are not going to know what I'm talking about. Okay? AI is not going to make you the man, it's just going to make you stronger, faster, that kind of thing. So if you think of it that way, then you'll have realistic ROI expectations, and that has to come first. The what you can save, what you can get, and then of course there are simple things. If you're speaking specifically CX, AI on the front end we know about. The chatbots, the self-service, all those things are low-hanging. They're easy. They're simple to set up. But I will tell you, if you were in a situation like, but I need a bigger impact. I need something. Then always AI that helps the agent is always going to give you a bigger impact, bigger ROI. Things like expert assist, agent assist, whatever different company has different names for them. But things that make the agent smarter, faster. There's software out there that actually clones your best agents and makes them a tool for all your masters to follow. Those things, because that gets your customer satisfied faster, that gets your customer to become repeat business. That ROI, I think, is a bigger impact. Not as quick to turn around as a chatbot, but more impactful in the long run.
That's a great answer, Brandon. Thank you. And I think you brought up a really key point there in terms of making sure you have a foundation prior to implementing AI.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of folks in the room, of feedback that I heard was, how do I know that the data being fed out through these solutions is accurate?
Yeah.
And I think you have to have the building blocks and the foundation before you can build on top of it. And I see several of you shaking your heads. I was a coworker, Ed and I were at CDW. We helped build the integrated services team over many years as the cloud team. And one of the things Jill was always harping on was a modern data set. And so CDW historically grew out of a legacy value-added reseller business. And we had a fairly antiquated system that was not so friendly to other types of tools. And one of Jill's points over and over and over was better data, better data, better data, better data. And it really resonated with me as someone trying to solve problems for clients, making sure we knew, well, what was a client interested in buying? What had they asked us for a quote? How were they looking to save money by way of technology acquisition? Where could we draw stitching between varying products and services? Jill, you really, that was a serious endeavor for you, and I think kind of dovetailing off of Brandon's comments about kind of building blocks, can you talk a little bit about the work you did at CDW in particular, and how that then creates a platform for these technologies and for better success, particularly from a sales perspective?
Sure. So one of the things that we try to change in terms of the dynamics, and any of you who've been in a sales organization or work with sales organizations, it was always about pulling things. I'm going to pull this for the customer, pull this, and I'm going to pull this, I'm going to go out and pull this information, and pull and pull and pull and pull. And one of the things we thought about was, if we stop doing that, and if we invest in some tools that could actually push things to the seller, what an amazing change that would be. We already have the information. Why do I have to have the sales organization pull from here and pull from there and pull from there and pull from there and do their own analysis before they talk to the customer? What if we could use that intelligence and push that information to the seller so they're already prepared to talk to a customer with all the information? I mean, of course, then I told my salespeople, at some point you gotta pick up the phone. You actually do have to just talk to a customer, at some point. So we have, that is sort of what we're talking about. Nobody's data is clean. I mean, part of AI in the very beginning of this whole process, what was attached from every provider was, first thing you have to do is you have to get some clean data. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it probably has to be better than what we have, because then you're taking action on something that supposedly is good information. And if it's not, then you're just compounding the problem. But the whole idea of delivering this information to sellers who could then act on it without having to spend significant time on the back end was something that we really worked on. And the second part of it, I think we'll talk about this as we go along, but the critical nature of understanding your customer's customer is really important, because whatever you're doing, if you're selling to either it's geography or a vertical market or generational types of customers, the approach is different. And even though it's very intriguing and sexy to say, I can reduce my cost by X amount if I never have an agent talk to one of my customers, if that customer is a customer who needs to be talked to, or it's generationally a group that you want to talk to that needs somebody or needs better hand-holding, the real key is, how do you delineate your customers and understand how to approach them with the right types of tools for the right types of approach? And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
That's a great point. Jill pointed out to me that 52% of the wealth in this country is held by boomers. And boomers like to talk to people differently than other people do. And so they also are, some are more aware, some are less aware of some of these different types of technologies. When I broke my elbow last week, 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I went to an emergency room from Rush Medical Center in Oak Park. I live in Oak Park. And I had a litany of x-rays, excuse me, and found out that I shattered my elbow. And so my wife's family has been in medicine for a long time, and she won't allow anything to happen without a second opinion. Always a second opinion. So there's a local organization in River Forest called Romano Orthopedics, and then we went to Rush, and we spoke to Rush specifically. We got an appointment with one call into Romano. We called 5 times to try and get an appointment at Rush, despite them being part of the same medical system. And I think probably the most alarming, and this goes back to your data point and how you advocate or don't, or how you consume these technologies. The first thing that happened when I went in to meet with the Rush orthopedic surgeon is they called me back for x-rays after I'd had them 3 days earlier at Rush in Oak Park. So there's a great example where they have the data. They knew that I had x-rays at Rush in Oak Park because they asked, where did you go for your initial triage? And I said, Rush in Oak Park. But yet the first thing they tried to do was to give me another set of x-rays that my insurance company wouldn't have paid for. So how many of the boomers may not have said anything and just said, oh, I guess I need more x-rays, and then been stuck with whatever the bill was for x-rays? Ultimately because there needs to be a common data set in our opinion, and that data needs to be shared amongst different practices and different people so that you can be more effective in terms of going to market. Marcus. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
I just want to add something on the data side. There's an additional element. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. There you go.
On the data side, there's an additional element other than your own source of data that your employees are using. All of us work at companies where employees are asking AI questions, and they're using that information that AI is providing to give your client and your customers answers. That information is not the same. The AI databases are not built equally. So one thing is the data that you have, your customer base that you're using. The other one is if you're using an outside source, and I don't have any stock in any of the companies, but a lot of them are open source, and that has, I mean, it's great and free and readily available. It's usually wrong, based on, depending on what you're looking for. But then the flip side of it is some of the databases are federated, which means the owners of the databases have scrubbed the information and validated it. So if you have employees, like we all do, that are sourcing answers from databases, it is incumbent upon you to know where that information is coming from, because in most cases it's being delivered directly to your client without any type of intervention.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brandon. And I think the key there being utilizing your own data, right? And being able to draw automation and patterns as you interface with clients, in this case, patients. And Marcus, being the healthcare practitioner on the panel, I am familiar a bit with the integration that NICE has to EHR, EMR, electronic medical records, the leaders being Epic and Cerner. And I'm also aware of some of the technologies that you've brought to market that can help mitigate the types of things that I just read out on. Can you maybe take us through types of conversations you're having with health systems, with varying orthopedic or other types of specific practices, and what you're hearing from them, and then ultimately the types of recommendations that you're providing to help mitigate some of the types of concerns I have?
So it's an interesting thing to be a patient because there is a giant asymmetry of information. You're probably not a doctor, some of you might be. And so you're more prone to just accept what it is that you're hearing from said provider. So in his case, he had somebody advocating for him to say, oh, get a second opinion. Many people will just not do that. Many people will also, even though they just got an x-ray, if they're told to get another x-ray, they're just gonna go get another x-ray because what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I assume that I'm being told what I need to do in order to get better. So it becomes even more incumbent upon the providers of healthcare to actually have a handle on the data so as not to create this sort of waste. The other problem that creates, by the way, is now he's got to schedule another appointment. Now he's got to take more time. That is consuming resources on the healthcare provider's side as well, right? So if he has to call 3 or 4 or 5 times to accomplish that one thing, that's 3 or 4 or 5 times the volume that particular provider is having to now deal with, and every one of those interactions has a cost associated to it. Right? If a human being is handling that process, that interaction, that single interaction is measured in dollars. So typically somewhere between $5 and $12 per interaction. And this is where we start to see the leverage with healthcare providers, right? And I'm going to go backwards a little bit with, AI. No matter what it is, you need to start with an outcome in mind, right? And the outcome isn't I want to automate my interaction. That's something that you do to achieve the outcome. The outcome is I need to, if you're a typical healthcare provider, I have more volume of interactions than I have people to handle it effectively, which is why the patient experience is terrible in the United States. Nothing is very easy. So when you know what the outcome is that you're trying to drive, you can start to put strategies together to do that. Every healthcare system that we talk to will tell you that roughly half, 50% of all the interactions that they get are simply questions around schedules. I need to schedule it, reschedule it, how do I get to it, where do I park, can I bring my dog, right? All that stuff is like right in the wheelhouse of automation, right? So when we think about sort of the things that you can do with AI, I lump them into a few separate buckets, right? There's patient-facing automation. There's what Brandon talked about, which is agent-facing, like how do we make the person more efficient? Things like real-time knowledge projection, right? Things like real-time sentiment analysis. So, that call center agent might be having a bad day. You're definitely having a bad day if you're on the phone with your healthcare provider, right? And you're probably not in a great mood. And if this person that you're talking to is a little asleep at the wheel and they're a little tone deaf, that's going to be a really frustrating experience. So what are the tools that we can deploy to help them realize when this is happening and take some course correction? Then the third bucket speaks to what your original question was way back when, which was, how do we know if it's working when we do these things? So the third bucket is how do we leverage that AI to actually drive insights? She talked about data. Reporting is a big thing for some of these things, but you don't really want a report, you want an insight. You want to know what that body of data tells you about what your business is operating like so that you can go make decisions and make processes faster, easier, smoother, more efficient, more consistent, and so forth. And so we have the tools today to be able to analyze with what degree of accuracy are we routing these interactions. How much of these interactions are actually being contained in automation? When they fail to contain in automation, where does it go and why did it fail? What was said or done or asked for that we couldn't automate so that we can go back in and retrain some of those tools to make them more efficient? And the last thing I'll say that he talked about, which is data, it is Nice's opinion, absolutely, that you simply cannot do effective AI or automation of any kind if you do not solve the knowledge problem. The data source that he was referring to needs to be yours, right? So you need to have an effective knowledge management solution in order to make sure that the data that you're pulling from, that your AI is going to get answers from, is actually accurate, updated, correct, consistent, right? And it should be the same data and the same knowledge management tool from which everybody is pulling. So that if you deal with automation, whether you deal with person, whether you are doing it digitally or in person, everybody is pulling from the same data source so that the answers are all consistent. It shouldn't be a wholly separate experience for you to deal with the automation at Acme Health versus talking to a human being at Acme Health versus calling back in later and talking to yet another human being, right? It should feel very much the same across the board. You can't do that if you don't manage the data better.
That's a great point. Thank you, Marcus. And I'm going to throw this to you, Jill, as well, because you were a real advocate for aggregation of data, and undoubtedly the leaders of the business were asking you, how do we measure it? And Marcus, you spoke about reporting and how do we know if it works and how do we know if it doesn't work. How did you approach that at your last organization, and what metrics did you use as a group in terms of, obviously increased sales, but there's more to that than just increased sales. How did you arrive at metrics, and then how did you report out on those metrics as you implemented more of a modern and common data strategy?
So, for those of you who don't know CDW well, you might be familiar with something like this, though. We had a homegrown, from the very start, CRM system. For those of you who've been at CDW, you know this. It was an absolute do not look behind the curtain type of system. But we had 30 years of growth over growth over growth, and sometimes people just go, let's not mess with it, let's not let's not screw this up. When in fact, we just the sellers manually worked around their ability to find information. It's just and they were masters at it. I have never seen fingers on keyboards move so fast in my entire life. And so, but it's not scalable. At some point, you're selling significantly more products and solutions and services and complicated customers, and you just can't do it that way. So I was in partnership with our CTO to drive the implementation of a CRM. So we're talking like an international coup here, to try to go from, Lisa will know, some of you know, to go from our homegrown system, SPS, to looking at a world-class CRM solution. And we did a bake-off. It was very specific, very expensive. We've never spent that kind of money on anything, any type of sales system ever. And we settled on Salesforce. And we're still implementing. And if anyone has implemented Salesforce or any CRM, to be honest, it is a lifelong journey. It's never just you implement it, then you move on. But what it did allow, one of the interesting things it allowed us to do is to talk to customers openly about our own vulnerabilities as a company. So we're approaching a $30 billion organization, 15,000 employees. We started a process called CDW on CDW, where we could talk to customers about our own experience to take that journey. And being vulnerable sometimes with customers opens up a lot of conversations. And the idea was to help our customers understand that we're trying to deliver more data to our sellers so that they can help them understand better solutions opportunities and pair them up with the multitude of major partners that we work with. But it came down to the organization understanding that this was important enough to invest a sizable amount of money to do that because we saw that years and years in advance. Now, the idea is, okay, how do you measure it? Very difficult to do because you're looking for increased revenue, increased profits, a wider array of things, speed to market, the ability to attach services to an opportunity very simply, which was not easy. But it's really the ability to deliver our sellers, again, pushing our information to our sellers so they were better equipped to talk to customers. And it was really around speed, but it's not only speed, but it's speed and then making sure that you have the right information going to the right amount of people. And it took a partnership. I had to have the CTO on board with me because it couldn't just be a sales process. Because I wasn't going to ask the company to spend millions of dollars just for the sales organization, because that wasn't going to work. Without that partnership, and many of you are, I'm sure, in that same boat, this is driving partnerships around the leadership team like nothing else, because it maybe it's housed in operations, maybe it's in marketing, maybe it's in sales, maybe it is IT handles this type of this work. Without the coordination of those executive leaders, it's impossible to do as an investment.
That's great, Jill, and I lived through that. I was on the Microsoft Dynamics evaluation side, and I might have lost a little bit more hair through that process, but we had to get there nonetheless. Your perspective is great from a CRM side, but organizations in the CX space also have service management, and they may have asset management, and they have inventory that's a separate system. They have a totally different help desk. And so I think what we're tasked with is either some cases looking at it in silos and trying to tackle our biggest issue, or having stuff thrown at us. And Adam, you're having stuff thrown at you all over the place. And I think it's imperative for us to not only talk about the benefits, and I'm not going to sit up here and only talk about benefits. There are lots of them. For example, I shouldn't have to talk to a person to cancel or reschedule my physical therapy. There's no reason, if I don't want to. But it does require the organization to potentially open themselves up to vulnerabilities and mitigating some of the risk. So you have an interesting perspective in your role in operations, having to ensure the broader estate when these types of technologies are being implemented. Can you share a little bit about kind of how you evaluate, how you ensure that other components are well cared for, and just your general feeling around the other adjacencies within an AI discussion?
Yeah, so I think it's back to what we started talking about before. The governance piece is key. One, making sure you have a relevant AI use case that helps the customer, improves the customer experience or improves your associates' experience. You have to have the security around it, and you have to make sure at the end of the day that there's some sort of return on that investment, right? Because it takes time. You're introducing new technology. Our industry, automotive, has not been the most innovative technology. 10 years ago, we were appraising a car with a little black book. It's only in the last 10 years or so that we actually went online and we automated and digitized that experience. I'll stop there for a minute. Let me ask you guys a question. Other than Ed, who I just did a red carpet corporate referral and got special treatment, how many of you love buying a car? Love that experience? Like, most people tell me they'd rather go to the dentist. They'd rather take their pet for surgery than go deal with like buying a car. There's so much opportunity for us, as far as we come in AutoNation. The difference, I think, with these big automotive groups and the small dealer groups is the technology we can bring to the customer experience. We've done our own innovations. We're trying to deliver that Amazon car buying experience, store to door, where you can do it all online and you deliver it on a flatbed to your house and you sign on an iPad in your driveway. We're trying to differentiate ourselves between the other automotive dealers with using technology, and I think AI is the next big piece. We're building huge call centers. You guys ever try to call to get status on your car at service? Try to get a hold of your service advisor, what that experience is like, get a hold of the parts department. These guys are running around, whatever. So we're basically building huge call centers that can take these calls centrally, get status centrally, and the next part of it is introducing AI into that process. So the common things you want to do: schedule your service appointment, like your medical situation, detect sentiment, like you mentioned. We need to be able to measure, have metrics to measure, but our business is all about CSAT. That's how we measure the success of the technology we're implementing. Of our 350 locations, 150 of them have JD Power Dealer of Excellence. That is the gold standard in our industry, and that's how we measure how our stores are performing. We believe introducing some of this technology, the next level of AI and automation, and reducing the friction of having to deal with people will bring a bunch of our stores to the next level. So we're really, really excited what it can do. And we're being very methodical about the technologies we're introducing, and we're making sure that it's delivering on the promise. It's not adding extra aggravation. You guys have been on those phone loops with IVRs and stuff like that. It has to be totally opposite of that, or we fail.
Yeah, that's great. CSAT is a great measurement, and a lot of people asked us at the beginning, how do we measure performance and success? CSAT's one, increased revenues another. Average handle time. Some people are continually trying to drive down average handle time for an agent. We're starting to see that metric change a bit, because typically the calls that actually make it to an agent are longer because they're more complicated. Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, just an interesting point specific to healthcare. It's not just frustration, right? There are real long-term effects to bad patient experience. So there's a body of evidence that says that a good patient experience leads to a more engaged patient, and a bad patient experience leads to a less engaged patient. There is a mountain of evidence that shows that more engaged patients have better health outcomes. If you are more engaged, you are more likely to finish that course of antibiotics. You are more likely to do the physical therapy. You are more likely to go to the follow-up things. You're going to do all the things that you need to do to be healthy. And that experience isn't just what happens when you cross the threshold into clinical care. It starts just trying to get the appointment. It starts with the follow-ups from that appointment. It starts with, how easy or difficult is it to get my prescription refilled, so on and so forth. And there are lots of structural problems in healthcare anyway, right? There's shortages in primary care physicians, shortages in nurses. The average wait time today to see a PCP, a primary care physician, is about 26 days, right? That's how far out you have to be able to plan. If you pile on top of that, a long wait time, or a frustrating IVR menu, or nobody calling you back, right? You're just going to disengage, and then you're going to have bad health outcomes. And those bad health outcomes manifest to the healthcare organization as now a patient being potentially admitted into the hospital. Now there's a hospital stay. When you think about something like diabetes, all of the most consequential outcomes of diabetes are preventable if you just take your medication. When you survey diabetic patients and ask them if they take that medication regularly, 30% say they do not. This is a self-reported number, which means it's more than 30%, right? And when you think about that, the outcomes are blindness, amputations, death, right? If you have to have your foot amputated, now you've got a hospital stay, a surgery, a recovery, physical therapy, possibly a prosthetic, right? Mental health comes into play. The cost of that poorly engaged patient that might have been driven by a bad patient experience is nearly immeasurable. So these things have to have real consequences beyond just it's annoying that my Amazon package was late, right? So it really has significant real world impacts, particularly around healthcare.
Wow, who invited the Grim Reaper to our drinks all around. I tell you, nothing makes Grim Reaper go away faster than some oysters and some crab and some steak. But in all seriousness, those are real world consequences, real world components of why this kind of conversation is relevant. And whether it's lost sales or patients being sick or other types of disengagement, this stuff really matters. And technology is at the forefront of it. I'd like to ask the panel one more question and then open it up to any of you that have questions. Brandon, I'd like to ask you one more question. Zoom has an interesting perspective because you're a platform of collaboration, a little bit different than NICE, which is really one of the market leaders in contact center software as a service. And you have a really interesting play that's unique to Zoom for employee experience, particularly WorkVivo, that I'm guessing most of, if not all of you, have probably never heard of, which I think is really cool, and it's a way to engage coworkers internally, which then, as Jill mentioned, the more you engage with your coworkers, the more likely you're going to have positive experiences with your customers. Can you spend a minute or two just sharing what is WorkVivo, how is AI part of WorkVivo, and maybe an example or two of some successes that you've had?
Yeah.
And Jill has that.
Yeah, it's funny because Jill almost made me start twitching when she was talking about Salesforce, and this is not specific to Salesforce. Anytime you get a CRM and you're going to implement it, it is what it is, right? It's a big overhaul. We actually, we might tell you guys in the beginning, one of the things we try to look at, we're going to buddy with somebody, we're going to build ice doing listen. We were looking at a CRM for not just for our contact center people, but for all of our employees, wait for them to interact and not have lost data, not have handoffs. We hate handoffs. We hate when you start with someone and then you have to, even if it's a warm transfer, everybody loves that. Oh, it's a warm transfer. I don't care. Okay, I still got to go to somebody else and explain to them. So we looked at different companies and we actually ended up buying a company. And the company's called WorkVivo, and they have a CRM or internal communication system that is kind of like it's like a combination of Instagram and Facebook. And we got it for that reason, because there's a generation of employees that we have that we did not have to teach how to use it because they live in those other systems all the time. And what it does for us is it doesn't, you hear companies talk about there's the employee experience and then there's the customer experience. And in most companies, they're separate unless you try to get some stuff to talk between them. What WorkVivo does, it actually orchestrates the interaction between them. So we don't have to worry about is data being transferred, did this person know that? Everyone's looking at the exact same portal, whether they're talking to a customer or just learning about a customer. And of course, it has cool things, you can have followers on it, you can post things and people can like your posts and all the kind of stuff that employees are used to doing. So to Marcus's point, it means it's getting used. Because it wouldn't matter if it just shared data if none of my employees used it. So the fact that it's fun to use makes it, and it is standalone, so you can use it with any system that you currently have. But it is actually, when you talk about ROI, for us, we have internal factors of how many times, like everybody tracks the customer, how many times the customer has to call you, right? And how many times well, we also track where Revo helped us is how many times did I have to relate to an internal department what I needed? How long did I have to wait for it? Did they understand it? What was my interaction when I'm in the billing department and I need somebody from fulfillment to do something? We know those things, and Workvivo expedites them because I'm not depending on a human to relay information.
Yeah, it's really cool. I've seen a demo and having payroll and knowledge management and throwing out cheers to coworkers and communicating questions in real time via chat and things like real-time language translation. So if you have coworkers that are in other countries, the ability to have common, immediate interaction without having language barriers is really cool.
Oh, it's
really,
huge.
really
I'm blessed. I have team members in multiple countries, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what it would be like if I had to learn how to, or much worse, have a physical translator or something every time I wanted to talk to them. That would be horrible.
Yeah, in many cases, that's a game changer in and of itself. Thank you all for bearing with us for what was a lively discussion. I appreciate all of you. We do want to open it up to the audience. If anybody has any questions for just a general question or for anybody specifically on the panel.
Nobody have any questions? All you guys understand how AI works? Everybody's ready to implement it right now. I don't think so.
No, I did not understand how AI works, but I was interested in how Brandon was talking about AI is it's not the meal, it's the seasoning, right? And Jill started to speak about how we need to push these insights to the seller. So I'm just curious if the panelist team had any insight on how are we still leveraging the seasoning of AI yet pushing it to the sellers? Are there any ways that people are successful with this, or what are the ways that we are doing this today?
I'm sure everybody can give you an example. There's a couple examples. The biggest one is being proactive with the information you have. That's what you're talking about pushing. So I'll give you an example of a customer experience one. There's the ability now to combine what you know when you're talking to a customer with what they had before. In the past, you had to have an agent read the notes from the previous phone calls. You have to do that more with AI. AI will summarize the calls and stuff like that. So one of the examples that one of my customers has is they're an insurance carrier, right? They have really cool commercials. Everybody wears white in their commercials, right? They have the ability, while they're listening to a call, to look back, and let's say the customer is asking about, the size of wheels or tire or something like that. They have the ability to look back and say, oh, that customer filed a claim last week. They had an accident on this time. So most likely they're probably trying to figure out if tires are covered. So before the agent gets to that conversation, the system can tell them, hey, based on what I know, what they really want to know is this. And you can proactively suggest that, right? You can also do things with that same information. The fact that Eric even had to make an appointment is absurd in this day and age. When a person has an accident, you know the course of treatment. The doctor diagnoses it and you know what the treatment is. You should be proactively scheduling those. I'm not from here, I don't know about the rush system, but I can tell you that UMC, back where I am, they would have scheduled that appointment. I wouldn't have called anyone, I would have talked to anyone. They would have scheduled that appointment and sent the information via text or a portal. So there are ways to be, anytime you can take what you know and answer the question before the customer has to ask it. Whatever that means for you, it works. One of my favorite ones, just for me personally, is I'm a Marriott guy. Okay, everybody has different loyalties. It's not that I don't like people, but I hate front desk. I do. And the fact that I don't have to stop with them anymore is amazing to me. Like I can check in on my phone, I know my room, and my phone opens my door. I bypass everyone, and I think they're not nice people, but I don't want to wake them up, I don't want to do this stuff. Simple things like that seem like, no big deal. To me, a person who travels 88% of the time, that's huge. Not having that time is huge. So simple things like that, I think work.
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good example where it's provided an amazing customer experience, and it's also been amazing for our business. We built an equity mining tool based on AI. So you come in, your car's out of warranty, you're still paying your car note, you got a $10,000 transmission issue. that triggers some logic in our system to figure out what that car's trade-in value is, what our real cost, without the profit built into that repair is. And we've approached our customers and say, hey, you can keep the same car note you have, maybe even it's a little bit less, or maybe it's $15 more a month. You'll avoid this $10,000 one-time repair. You're gonna leave here today in a brand new car, new year model, and avoid this $10,000 repair. 3,000 sales a month, brand new, from data we've had from the beginning of time since this tool was put in place. So data that we have, understanding what's going on in service, and then approaching you, and 8 out of 10 times, customers, facing that kind of repair bill are saying, yeah, it makes tons of sense. I don't want to. Yeah, I can leave here, pay this $10,000 bill today, and then something else goes wrong tomorrow. So yeah, amazing for our business, and I think it provides a pretty cool customer experience. So we call it equity mining.
That's awesome.
Great answers. Great question. Any other questions?
Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge and your great stories. My question is regarding the measurement strategy for AI. So the use cases that you spoke of, Marcus, was high world order long-term implications over extended periods of time. But then there's you, Adam, that perhaps is maybe looking like in an annual view or more of a short-term view. Could both of you maybe offer some opinion on how you balance measuring ROI on the short-term versus long-term? Especially given that there's just so much appetite and pressure to consume AI. So my role is head of HR tech for Cornerstone On Demand, and so I look after the HR technology systems that our Cornerstars utilize. And so we're trying to AIify everything that we're doing, but a lot of that is, that's a new word. We're trying to deliver that in a rushed manner, but we're also trying to balance the long-term effects that we're seeing value be proven. It's going to take some time. So maybe just share a little bit of your perspective on that tension that exists.
Yeah, so I think the first way to answer that is like just like when there was a rush to cloud, automation, it was generally 100% on premise, and we said we want to be very precise about the use cases we want to do to go to cloud. And we want to make sure it makes good financial sense. You saw a lot of repatriation from different companies back to on-prem because it got too costly or it didn't live up to what was promised. And I think we have the same challenge with AI is we're trying to be very precision about where we implement it, and it becomes very easy to measure and make sure it's the right investment. And then we're getting good CSAT, we're getting good employee engagement with it. And so we have some serious, very obvious problems we're trying to solve. I mentioned the example of service. The number one complaint, I deal with it myself as an employee, is I drop my car off and I'm trying to get a status update and you can't get a hold of anybody or an IVR loop. If I could automate that experience, because the techs now have an app and they're taking pictures of your car, we're sending you videos when it's on the rack, and there's all kinds of innovations we've done there. But if we can take all of that and automate it and use AI to be able to call a call center or use an app to find out exactly where my car is, not have to interact or talk to anybody, or if you do, you're calling a number and using automation. That is, one, it takes a huge load off our associates, and two, it provides that amazing customer experience that, again, we believe is going to be a differentiator between us and all the other automotive groups. So I guess the simple answer is we know we have 5 or 6 problems we're trying to solve. We're going to make investments, and it's very easy to measure if they're working. Different businesses, I guess, have different challenges there, but that's kind of our situation.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would add to that is, because it goes back to something I said at the beginning, when I typically see a challenge where it's the short-term ROI versus the long-term thing, it's usually in most cases because somewhere along the line there were unrealistic expectations, or the actual expectations were never set. And I know all you guys have heard this before, but I say this all the time. It can be good, it can be fast, or it can be cheap. It can only be 2 of those 3. It can never be all 3. So you have to figure that out. And this is I started to say shameless, but it's not shameless at all. I'm telling you from a vendor perspective, the best thing, in my opinion, that you can do in those cases is get Rise to help you set realistic expectations. So that helps me. Honestly, it does. When the customer knows and has predetermined measurements for it, then it works, and it's always better to do that with an advisor. It's always better to do that with someone outside your company. I tell customers all the time, when you're talking technology, advanced technology, AI especially, it's like deep water. Don't go into deep water alone. You don't do that. It's a buddy system, and you should utilize that, and it'll work out better.
Just the only thing I would say, I think what gets missed a lot is if you don't really know what you're trying to do when you do this sort of AI thing, right, whatever that thing is going to be, you're going to have a hard time measuring it because you don't really know what you're measuring it against. So one of the things that I think gets missed is sort of like a baseline evaluation of where you are today relative to whatever this outcome that you're trying to drive is, so that you have a compare. And then you also need to sort of figure out how much of a difference needs to be made in order for the juice to be worth the squeeze. Right? And lastly, the thing that gets missed is the sort of change management, cultural change management that goes along with any of these kinds of solutions. I think people underestimate just exactly the levels of effort and the potential disruption that this causes, and they do a very poor job of putting a change management process into place in advance of doing this kind of change.
I think those are all great points, and I will add, there's a partner of ours, the Northridge group, who handles the people process part of these types of transformational changes. We tend to be the technology, and so we work with partners like the Northridge group who come in and do that type of evaluation, and they can run you through an AI assessment. They can look at impacts in the organization. They can help you build journey maps. They've done this for very, very large clients like AT&T and others, and they've also done it for small regional customers as well. So the first place is typically an assessment to understand what you have, and then looking at it prescriptively and figuring out what's my roadmap, where are my components, where should I place my bets and investments. And in our opinion, Northridge is the best in the business in doing that, and that gives us a better chance of implementing successful technologies through RISE and our partnerships like Sonus and NICE and Zoom, because we've got the outcomes potentially predetermined in an assessment that we've implemented in the beginning.
One of the things I'm interested in asking the audience about this as well, but one of the challenges is we talked about there are so many leaders, there's so many decision makers that find their way into AI, again, across technology and marketing and sales. I think what it comes down to is accountability. I just want to know who is accountable for the experience the customer receives. And at CDW, years ago, in this different forms, the seller every quarter was rated on their customer experience. And we sent surveys to customers every quarter, and they would be dinged on their commissions if they did not get a good survey back from their customers. And it didn't matter whether their order didn't get there because configs didn't get their work. It didn't matter. They were 100% accountable to that business, regardless. And so I think one of the things that's potentially is frustrating to me is like who owns the accountability? If I have a terrible experience, everyone's so eager to ask me what I thought about it. Give me the survey, send me the survey, text me the survey, how did you think? I mean, as quickly as they can kick me off the phone or, to do that. And I may give a bad exam, I may give a bad survey, but nothing happens. Nothing happens. Who is accountable for that experience? What did they do with that information? And did they do it, and did it get any better? So maybe I'm just really old-fashioned, but I mean, it comes down like, where is the accountability in the organization? And if everyone is accountable, nobody is accountable. So it's just something to think about. I'm curious if anybody's got any great words of wisdom about how they do it in their company and do it well.
I saw a couple hands earlier.
Hi, I'm Michelle Shaw, and nice to see familiar faces from AT&T back in the day. So I work for Circana, and I am part of our AI governance committee, and I'm also in charge of anything that touches colleagues. So IT help desk, end user computing, Office 365, the list goes on and on. So in terms of accountability, one of the things that we've been trying to do, and it's very difficult, is we partner across the entire organization, and our leadership team, CEO all the way down, is very engaged in making sure that we have an AI strategy, right? So we're kind of building it as we go, I will tell you. We're building it on the fly. But the governance committee has been helpful because it's me from a colleague perspective and kind of an AI seat perspective in the organization. And then security, our tools team and our privacy team and our legal team sit together and evaluate every single tool anybody in the organization wants to incorporate, right, or bring into the organization. But to your point, everybody thinks that AI is a product. So people come to us and just say, how do I do AI? Right? We get those requests every day. I need to do AI. I've been told I need to do AI. How do I do AI? Right? So to answer your question, how are we doing this? We're essentially trying to put guardrails around everything that comes in. We've blocked all AI in the organization unless it's approved. Right? So we have blocks across all the laptops, all the servers, everything's blocked. All open source is blocked. So we've really put a lot of guardrails up around our organization. But I will tell you, it's very difficult to kind of hold people back. Everybody wants it. We get so many tool requests. So I'm just wondering if others have a different strategy that we're doing, because we are tackling this day in and day out as it comes at us. We don't have a dedicated team to it, right? We're all kind of doing this as I call it my side hustle, my AI side hustle. So I'm just wondering if anybody else in the room has other advice or strategies that they're using that are maybe a little more efficient.
If anybody's willing to raise their hand, or if you'd like to rather
Talk to Michelle in one-on-one if you are not willing to raise your hand. I will say we have clients that are turning everything off just like you. It's not an uncommon thing. And they're taking things in-house. Adam, you kind of shared a little bit earlier.
The requests are coming faster than we can.
Well, the requests come faster than we can handle it.
Yes.
However, we're not turning down all the tools, but we're doing a very in-depth review of them before we just say implement, right? You can't, AI is the Wild West.
Yes, and the other part of it is, it sounds like your organization may be mature at a process to evaluate them. We're still figuring it out, right? We're still figuring it out, and we're playing catch up. And yeah, that's the big issue is all these different departments are approaching us with different AI solutions outside of what IT is sanctioned and doing, and we're like, okay, what goes first? How do we evaluate this? How do we make sure that the security around it is right? It's this is the biggest challenge, I think, for AI and what we're dealing with right now is the requests are coming fast and furious.
It's so fast. We get so many a day. And the other thing is, if you implement it, you have to support it.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece, right? And there has to be a true ROI for it, which is also very difficult for parts of the organization to prove. I have seen, and I'm curious from others in the room, legal, marketing, they really have some pretty strong use cases for AI if they're secure. That's really where I've seen kind of the most return on investment. I'm curious in terms of maybe even colleague services from your perspective. I mean, a basic, I call it my baby bot or IT assist chatbot, very helpful. Automation's very helpful, but actually AI to enable a better colleague or customer experience. Has anybody seen a true ROI from that perspective?
I don't know about that. But I will say to your previous question, I see the opposite all the time. Like where people haven't done what you've done, which is sort of make a centralized sort of process for the entire organization. I all the time see there's somebody over here with this group doing a project, blissfully unaware that there's somebody over there doing maybe a similar project or a different project, with no regard for the fact that this project over here might disrupt something over there. In healthcare, we see a lot of titles like VP of Digital Innovation, and they'll run off and look at digital front door solutions like bots, with no regard whatsoever for the fact that that will have a consequence in the contact center, and that those things should be related, right? So your system sounds reasonable as long as you can get through the work. In terms of ROIs on customer experience, I can only speak to the industry I'm in. The bad customer experiences is why like this whole move towards concierge medical is a thing, right? People are tired of the terrible sort of service that is healthcare, right? The show up to your 2 o'clock appointment, sit there for half an hour, fill out all the forms that you've already filled out before, go back and see a doctor maybe 10 minutes after that, sit there for another 10 minutes, your 2 o'clock appointment doesn't really start till 3, the doctor sees you for 6 minutes and then you leave, right? And that's a true statement, by the way. The average amount of time that a doctor spends with you is about 7 minutes in the United States. It's a little higher in Europe. So there is lost revenue there as a result of that, and there is things like Solace Health and One Medical and a bunch of others where now you can just sort of pay a fee, right? So if you have the means, you pay a membership fee and you can just walk in whenever you want to. And a lot of people are moving in that direction, so there are consequences.
This is not the only way, but one of the most common ways to track ROI in the CX space is what we call a cost per interaction. Before you use the cost per interaction, you have to monetize time. So we come up with a figure that says my average employee, I pay my average employee X amount of dollars per hour, my average employee works 8 hours, during that 8 hour they handle X number of interactions. Now I have a cost per interaction for that individual, and I can multiply that, I scale that across the number of people I have, the number of interactions that they're tracking. Once I have that benchmark, then I can say that, okay, if the majority of people, you take root cause analysis, you say the majority, I'm trying to make this fast, you take the top 5 reasons people call us is because of billing, resetting account codes, account balance, wherever it is, and on average, that top reason takes people 2 minutes, and therefore my cost per is this. Well, if I use AI to self-service that on the front end, I can track 2 things. I can track either the reduction in the number of times it happens, or the reduction in the amount of time it takes to happen. Both of those are real numbers that I can compare to my cost per action. Once you start doing that, then you just work your way down the list. You get to your lesser things that people are calling about, and that's when you start figuring out, okay, I've maxed out a little bit, or I've gotten to 75-80% of my front end stuff with self-service. Now my next ROI is going to come on the back end. I'm now paying this individual a certain amount of money to handle this transaction, and they can only handle 3 per hour because of the amount of time it takes to look in multiple systems. I reduce the amount of systems, I make information faster for them. Now they're not handling 3, now they're handling 6. Now my cost per transaction. So I try to say that fast. There's actually more detail I can share with you if appropriate. But there are some tangible numbers that we assign to time and then assign them to per transaction so we can track ROI.
I was just going to say that you mentioned the chatbot with the help desk. We just launched ours, ServiceNow AI integration into ServiceNow last week. And after buying a car, the second thing people hate the most is calling our help desk. It's in Malaysia, and I think they do an okay job, but that's the second most thing people hate to do. It's our back-end help desk. So we'll know very quickly if we got it right. Our CSAT for our internal associates calling the help desk should go up. Less calls to the help desk, which drives down costs. And yeah, I'm hopeful that has revolutionized that experience. We're only a week in, so I don't know yet, but time will tell.
And I just have one parting thought. We do have some of these metrics from partners. We implemented a new CX platform for a Midwest energy company, and they found that there are calls that hit their actual agents. They had no way of digital or automated outage reporting. So the only way you could do it was picking up the phone. They implemented a new CX platform, and they offered self-service, which included you doing it over the internet, doing it via chat, and or doing it via voice bot. And they found in times of storms a 32% reduction of calls that actually hit an agent's desk. And they actually do have the metrics Brandon outlined, and it saved them tens of millions of dollars annually, because when there are storms, their call center scales offshore because they need to be able to accommodate more calls. So there are real metrics that can be saved, that we can provide. We have a ton of them. I'm not going to sit here and rattle them all off, but firms like FedEx and Humana and others have real world examples of where they've implemented tech and they've seen significant cost savings. So that's a great way, I think, to end our panel conversation. The bar and food is open until 6. We'd love for you to stick around, have another cocktail. Feel free to grab one of us from the panel or multiples of us if there are sidebar discussions. Don't forget Tiffany and John in the back have a real live demo of the accent mitigation. And we have gift bags on your way out, so please see Ashley at the check-in desk for a gift bag. It's a little token of our appreciation for you joining us. And if you have feedback, we'd love to hear it, good, bad, ugly, and different. Just scan that QR code that's on the table or on the panel, the trifold that are available as you leave via the exit. So thank you all very much. Thank you to NICE, thank you to Zoom, thank you to Sonus, Jill, Adam from AutoNation. We thank you all very, very much, and most importantly, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it.